Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you're listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable Podcast. This is podcast number 720. My name is Eric Nilsson. And with me today, I have no co-host at all because Bob Planker is at VMware Connect, and he is going to join us, but he has not joined us yet. And we are going to see Tony Foster jump in as well. So until we have that, I have no co-host. But there's a lot going on, so I thought I would do a podcast. Today on the show, we're going to have Konstantinos Kaminaris, but he's not showed up either. But there's so much going on that I thought I would do the show and talk a little bit about VCF on the Nooks, right? We are doing the VCF on the Nooks lab here in Connect. I am at Connect. So it's VMware Connect in St. Louis, and it has been a great show so far. It kicked off today. We've had a leadership conference that's been going on, and the leadership conference started yesterday afternoon. We have 60 VMUG leaders coming in for training and a hackathon for how to do better VMUG chapter meetings and all the like. So super excited about what's going on there. And I see Tony Foster has joined us. Tony, I just said good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So you just got here just in time. Nice to see you. I am in St. Louis at VMware Connect. It's a lot of fun going on right now. We're right in the middle of starting the show. We've got the leadership conference going on right now. A lot of fun, a lot of brainstorming on how to make the best chapter meeting. And we had a good brainstorming session today. I'll talk a little about that. But before I get going with regard to all the stuff that's happening with Connect, and then we'll talk about the VCF labs that me and Frankie Bergen are doing at Connect. Before we do that, I'll say, hey, Tony, how's it going? Where are you at? Are you in Kansas City today? And what's the weather like?
So I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I am in Salina, Kansas today. And yes, the weather here is sort of gray and gloomy. We've got showers and stuff moving through the area. What's the weather like in St. Louis, Eric?
Yeah, it is beautiful. It's sunny and nice. But let me tell you, I flew across the nation, and it was one of the bumpier flights I've ever flown, right? It was just a big gray storm. When you looked out the window at 30,000 feet down, there was just cloud cover. And we couldn't even fly above some of the tops. At one point, we just had to fly through some of it, and we were getting jerked around, right, for about half the flight. It was just, it's a big storm somewhere, and it was coming through it all to get here. But
it was here in Kansas.
Right. I can believe that. The weather's nice right now. St. Louis is a pretty town, and we're in a big hotel, and it's great to see all the community people. So excited to be in St. Louis for sure. We got interesting show today, and Tony, you can. Our guest isn't here, but we're going to talk about VCF on a Nook, and you can just interview me if you want, or tell me how bad it is. And I'll just, but before we do that, in the news, I don't think there is any other news other than we're here at VMware Connect, the first one ever. They have 300 people at the show. It's a paid show, so I think it's $400 for the 3-day event. We had the unconference today. I was in the AI session, so a lot of fun there. So lots of fun to be here, and it's not too late. Tomorrow is the kickoff of the show. Today's kind of the pre-conference. It's Wednesday. Hawk's final he's wrapping it up on Friday afternoon. So full 2 days. So if you want to pop by St. Louis, we're all here at the Hilton Hotel downtown by the ballpark. So a lot of action, a lot of fun. It's been fun to have a community conference, right? Where it is just all people that care about the community, VMUG members. You know, it's put on by VMUG. It's just every friend I've ever known, right? You know, saying hello to people. So it is a lot of fun, and there's a lot of serious guys that run data centers, right? So
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
So I do think there's one thing in the news that should be covered, because I think the last day is either tomorrow or Friday, and that's call for papers. So call for papers for Explorer is still open. So if there's something cool you want to talk about,
right,
you want to get that put in soon.
Get it in writing, and get it out, because there's going to be a lot of people at at Explore this year as well, right? We did a show of hands. How many people are at Connect are going to go to Explore? About half of everybody that's here plans on going to Explore as well. Plus, they're going to have community pricing, so $900 or less. I think under $900 gets you a community pass. It gets you all the community sessions, the expo hall, the hub, and a couple other things. No food, but and then they have different tiered pricing. So it's going to be a great show, and all the community sessions get passes as well. So get your session ideas in. You get a couple more days. They are focusing the event on community, which is why they're having lower price tickets for community. They want practitioners there. The event isn't going to be, the big corporate, vendor kind of conference. It's really, Explore is really looking at, practitioners. So,
and I'm looking forward to that because those are the fun people to hang out with, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So it should be a good show this year. And they're not having the full conference in Barcelona, so we should see a little bit more European presence. They are going to do European Roadshow Explorers, so I think they got like 5 of those mapped out that they're going to announce. I don't know if they've announced the cities yet, but those are coming. But I think that Vegas should be a little bit bigger this year. So, and it should be fun. And they're marrying the community spaces with the expo hall like they did in Europe. That was a lot of fun. So the format shouldn't be this big empty place. It should be much more busy like the European was in Barcelona last year. So I'm excited about that.
Woohoo!
Yeah, there you go. I know the experts. I know Corey is on a plane to come here right now. So he's on a plane. Bob Plankers is around. I saw him. He said he'd join us at the podcast. But I think we're 2 hours off the West Coast. So there's just a little bit of confusion on when the show was going to be, right? So maybe he's just downstairs getting busy with the Connect. And I came up to the hotel room just to do the podcast. Lots going on. So what I'm going to talk about, Tony, is a failed project. Not everything goes according to plan, right? And VCF on the Nooks is definitely a failed project at this point, right? Like, sometimes we push the envelope. We tried to do Kubernetes on Raspberry Pis. We tried to do vSphere on Raspberry Pis. We've tried to do cool things, Kubernetes on the Nooks last couple of years. This year we want to get VCF running on the Nooks, and me and Frankie definitely grinded on that for 3 weeks solid, trying, and so has William Lamb, right? So.
If I understand correctly, literally you ground on this.
Yeah, a little. What do you mean by literally? I did grind on. Yeah, on the expert Nick. I did grind away. I did grind away pieces of the circuit board to get the PCIe SSD installed and the Wi-Fi hub chip in. So I'll go through what worked and what didn't here on the show today, because even though our topic was what I wish my mom had told me about VCF, I can just tell you what I wish somebody had told me about VCF before I started this project, because I think I've installed, ESX, vCenter, and vSAN at least 5 different times on the Nooks. Because once you twist, and here's my first takeaway of this project. Once you twist vSAN and get it twisted, you might as well just reinstall everything, right? Because to unwind vSAN and fix it once it's already gotten corrupted or broken is just not worth the time, right? You're just better off going, well, let's just reinstall everything. And I started this on the vExpert Nook, which, believe it or not, that was the easy one, right? Or relatively easy. It got super hot, right? Because you're grinding away, and vCenter took 5 hours to install and come up, right? Like it literally just sat there grinding away because it's only a 4-core Celeron processor. But it did install. I have 750 gig storage. PCIe. You can't run tiered memory on it, right? So I got 64 gig on the Nook, the vExpert Nook. Turns out those little Max Tangs, you can get 64 gig running on them, right? So 232 gig SIMs.
Yep, I have 32 running in mine, so Yes.
Right. So I got 64 running after ChatGPT told me no one's ever done that. So I gave ChatGPT some education afterwards. So no, they run. And
Yes.
so it does and runs pretty good. And so I got 64 gig. I got a 500 gig SATA hard drive, or SATA SSD, and then I got a 256 PCIe SSD, and so that gives me 750 gig of storage and 64 gig of memory on that little Nook 4-core Celeron processor, right? So now I'm not going to install VCF from the installer, which I forget the name of the installer, like Data Center Manager or some kind of name like that. I'm going to install vSphere 8, then I'm ESX, then I'm going to nest ESX, put vCenter on it, right? Put a VM, put vCenter on it, do another VM, did I needed my local domain name and SSL, so I did DNS.
DNS,
Yeah, did a DNS server. So set up a VM for DNS, right? And installed Ubuntu on that, right? And then installed some open DNS server that was out there and got all my DNS set up with my local IP addresses, because this has to be on a table, not connected to the internet, right? So first lesson I learned is don't try to install vCenter and not on the internet, right? Like, it likes DNS, it likes everything set up. So I didn't set up my DNS first. I tried to install vCenter with just static IP addresses, and that doesn't work, right? You either have to have your DNS set up first, or you're on the internet, one of the two. But don't try to set it up with no DNS with static IP addresses. Doesn't like that.
So, this sounds like the old IT adage. If there's something wrong, it's probably DNS.
Yeah, that was probably it. Yep. SSL certificates are your friend, and DNS is your friend. And so if you don't have that set up, vCenter just grinds away until eventually you're like, I don't know, I don't think something's right. And then eventually it comes up, but you're getting warnings right, left, and center. So, okay, start over, delete your vCenter VM, go get your Ubuntu, set up your Ubuntu, set up your DNS, set up your IP addresses statically in the DNS table so that you have, everything resolving properly, test your resolve, and I got it going. Okay, good. Then set up vCenter, which is another VM, set up your VM, install vCenter, and then sit around and wait for 5 hours while this poor little Nook, because eventually it installed fine. That took about an hour. It didn't take that long to install. But then to boot it on a 4-core Nook, it just took forever. And there's a command you can watch all the services start up, right? And it says finished starting this one, so it did that. And that's what took like 4 more hours, right? Because it just was grinding away. And I tweeted out a picture of the thermometer I put on top of the fins on that little Max tank, and it was 142 degrees.
Wow.
Fahrenheit.
So I was going to say, you could start cooking yourself dinner.
You could. Actually, they say that hot dogs cook nicely at 140. So does marshmallows melt at 140. So you're at 142, you're pretty much at a low cooker. Right, and you can, so I was thinking of making a s'more, right? Put graham crackers, chocolate, and a marshmallow, and just let that thing go, right? But eventually I decided to put a fan on it, and amazing, I put a little fan on it, and then everything drops to like 90 degrees, right? Because a fan works wonders for that guy. So
yes, it does. What I have noticed is you put the top plate of that is pure aluminum, and you put a fan on there, you can watch the temperatures drop like mad.
Yeah, that's what it did. It just dropped from 142 down to like 90 degrees, right? 89, 90. And I was like, okay, this is good. Because I was wondering if the performance issue was just it was getting hot. Maybe there was an issue with, it throttling itself after it gets a certain temperature. I don't know. So I put a fan on it. I don't think that really made a big difference. What made a big difference was waiting the 5 hours until vCenter had installed and had caught itself up and had everything running. then it kind of like, oh, okay, and by the next day, it was actually running pretty smoothly, right? With DNS and vCenter on the NUC, it was running, and you could log into vCenter pretty quickly, like 30 seconds to get in, and you had your vCenter with that. Then you do the vSAN fun, right? So then you install the vSAN, then you install an upgrader script that will actually try to upgrade you to VCF, which basically installs NSX, and then installs the manual packages of the SDDC manager. And so that's how you can get to VCF without trying to use the data center manager, which checks the number of cores, right? So it's a workaround to get around that. So
So with that, do you have to download anything special beyond the script?
Yeah. You have to go download the SDDC manager. It's on the download center. You got to click on the extra accessory. I don't know. In Broadcom, they have vSphere 8, and they have all the 8 stuff. And then down below, it has like other stuff, right? And you click on the other stuff, and then sure enough, there's the SDDC manager as an individual installed package, right? ISO image, or I forget what it was. And so you can go get that. It's on the download center. If you got your Advantage membership, you can go in. They give you all the 8 stuff. So you go to 8, and oddly enough, there's 8.0.2.1.1. That's the latest version. You click on that, and the folders are empty. And you're like, what? But if you click on 0.8.2.1, not the .1, just the 2.1, that's got all the bits. You click on that. And I don't know why they have the link to the new one. And I've had several community members come and complain, like, how come I go in and 8.2.2.1 and it's like empty? And I'm like, I don't know why it is, but just don't click on that one. Click on the 8.2.1. Don't add the extra one in there, and all the data's there. Then when you go in there, you'll see all the stuff you can download. And then also they have extras or whatever it is, accessories or something. And in there is the individual packages for the SDDC manager. So if you do install first ESX, then vSAN, then NSX, then you can install SDDC manager, and that is the full VCF. So that's how you get that without running into the core restriction.
Awesome.
At least, yeah. But, good luck getting it to actually run, because I said this was a failed project. So I did then I created 3 more ESX, nested EXs, right? And turned on the nested flag so that it stopped yelling at me for not having the nested flag in the BIOS, because these guys have a BIOS setting. Tried to see if I could run nested memory, tiered memory, but the memory controller on the Max-Tang does not support the protocol you need to tier the memory, right? There is a tiered memory protocol. You can ask ChatGPT. It'll tell you the acronym for the tiered memory protocol that you need in the hardware in order to support tiered memory. And it turns out that no NUCs, no mini PCs, none of these little guys are supporting that memory interface. You need bigger machines. You need the Dells and the HP servers, to actually, it needs to be an enterprise class server before you're going to have that memory. So the reality is memory tiering will not work on small guys, small little NUCs.
So can you buy like a home PC and sort of sneak around that, or
no?
Does it have to be server grade?
I think it has to be server grade. Everything I read said, yeah, this interface is for the $10,000 memory cards, not what you're buying in your local PCs, right? Like, so I haven't found a single machine that would support the tiered memory interface. So that means no. But I turned on the nested BIOS, and then I learned that you can't do nested on these guys. So the extra memory I have, I will not be able to use my PCIe SSD to extend the memory on the Max-Tang, right? So, and this will bite me later too, because the GTX Tech or GTK Tech machine that we got, which is our faster, I'll get into that in a minute. Let's just stay on the Max-Tang. I I got vSAN set up, vSAN ran, got storage, got, I took 200 gigabytes of my storage, and I managed to get 75 gig, because you got to multiply by 3, because you got 3 nodes or something like that, and it divides your storage by 3 or something like that to get your storage. Maybe it was 2. Maybe I gave it 200 and I got 100 gig available. It's not striped. It was just storage, but it is across 3 ESXi nodes. I think that's what. Yeah, I put 50 on each node, 50 gig on one node, 50 gig on the next, and 50 gig on the next. And therefore, when I created my vSAN network, I got 50 gig, right? And they're all represented on all 3 nodes. So got that to work on the Maxtang, which was, impressive, right? With 64 gig of memory. Yeah. So that's where I ended up stopping, because that's where, when you're running all this and you boot up the 3 vSAN nodes, the poor little Maxtang that's where it actually hit 142 degrees, because it's trying to do vSAN storage, all nested, with vCenter, controlling it. And that was about as much as you're going to get on that guy, right?
So I'm just going to ask, just knowing that you can get Maxtangs fairly inexpensive, would it be possible to order like 3 Maxtangs and just spread your VCF deployment out over 3 Maxtangs possibly?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. Well, yeah, I think that would help the storage for sure, right? I don't know if by the time you, I think so. I think because we're doing nested, that's one of the problems, right? Is that if I had 3 Maxtangs with 64 gig each, and each machine, memory would be, then I would have 96 gig of memory. That would help. And I think the SDDC manager just runs in a VM. So you can pick one machine to run your SDDC in. You can pick one machine to be your DNS server, right? And you don't have to have anything nested. So yeah, I think that would have been fine. 3, or and I've heard of people doing that, right? Spreading the load out across a couple NUCs.
Awesome. I was just curious, because I'm like, well, they're fairly inexpensive. I guess that might be a solution to somebody who doesn't have space for a large enterprise server.
Now, what I would say is we did find, I'll cut. So the next, all right. So that's where I got on the Maxtang. We got it running, and I built some labs for Connect where you can SSH. We got the server at the end of the table, and we got the IP addresses, and all the little desktops for the table can SSH in or go to the browser and go look at vCenter running on it. And so we have all the IP addresses for everything. And when you sit in the lab, we'll take you through slides and show you what we did, and then you can SSH in and you can play with it, right? Which is about as much as we got, right? Then for the lab, that's why it failed, because we don't really have a good lab, because we didn't get NSX, we didn't get SDDC manager up and running. So therefore, on the Maxtang, the most you're going to get is learn how we got vSAN running, right? Yay. Okay. So that's not particularly a fail, but it was challenging to make it work. But we knew that was because it's a cell-around processor. Then we got a GTK Tech mini PC, which is a NUC form factor, but you're not allowed to call them NUCs anymore because they're not done by Intel or Lenovo. Lenovo now owns the NUC brand, so technically you're not allowed to say NUC anymore, but I'll call it a NUC. And it was AMD 12-core dual thread, so that means 24 threads, CPUs, which was kind of cool, right? GDK, has 24 cores basically, right? Or 12 cores, dual thread means you got 24 cores, and that's above the 16 required, I think, to run VCF. So we're pretty happy about that.
Sounds
But
like faster install time.
Yep, faster install time. vCenter came up blazingly fast, 15 minutes later, VCX was up and running. Now, we did have a problem that there is a BIOS hack that when ESX boots on these guys, anything over 16 cores is a different core type, and it gives you the blue screen of death when you first run it, right? And when you first install ESX on it, it gives you a blue screen of death saying, sorry, invalid core type. You have to disable the core check in the boot BIOS of the ESX installer. So you get to pass in some boot parameters on the ESX installer line. So when you're going to install ESX, you got to escape it, and you got to tell it to ignore the upper cores, right? On the upper cores. The upper cores are fine. It's just they don't pass the checks properly because there's some different core type. The first 12 cores are legit, or 16 cores are legit, but then the other ones are some strange cores that don't pass the ESX installer core check. So you have to tell it to ignore the core check, and we did that, and then it boots up, and then you have to permanently make your new ESX. You have to give it those boot options and save those boot options. So every time it boots, it won't do the core checks, which we did. It's got rid of the blue screen of death on the GTK Tech machine. And this machine goes for about $800. But sadly, we bought it for William Lamb, and they have 32 gig of memory soldered on, no SIM card slots. Ooh. So you can't expand the memory because apparently these are designed. They have a GPU on them. Some, I don't know, maybe it's an Intel GPU. I don't know whose GPU it is. It's an AMD. It's an AMD, so it must be an AMD GPU because it's an AMD CPU.
It is.
Yeah. So it's an AMD GPU, and they're designing them with this super fast memory chip soldered on the board, so that you can run AI models. So DeepSeek and others, you can use this little guy to basically run an AI model, right? In runtime, not doing the model generation, but just running the runtime of the AI model. So they're selling them like that. And NVIDIA announced their Spark machine, which is their GPU and a little Linux form factor NUC. And so all the other vendors are trying to get in the cute little, hey, home lab AI engine business. Yes. Which means they're soldering on these super fast chips, right? And so you're stuck with 32 gig of memory on our nice little 24 core machine, right? Which, all right, so we boot it up. vCenter runs blazingly fast, and we're really happy. We're like, this is going to go well. So we set up the VM. We set up DHCP, set another set of IP addresses so that we can have both machines running on the lab tables here at Connect. We're excited, and then we go to run the vSAN, and vSAN just does not like 32 gig of memory. Like, it just won't even start, right? It's just like, it just grinds away, and you start getting errors, timeout errors, X number of second response, or whatever, half a second response on this vSAN, file system request, and eventually it times out, gives you an error, and one of the vSAN nodes drops off, right? And then it just drops off and says sorry, and then you can't get it back on, right? You're done, right? And so we're like, So me and Frank were like, what's going on? So we figured it out. It was not enough memory on the GDK. Yeah, the GDK just did 32 gig, and we were starving it. So we went back to vCenter, and we, first we had to delete all the the VMs that had the ESX, because don't bother trying to fix your vSAN. Once something like that happens, there is a procedure for it, but it's like an all-day procedure. It's quicker just to delete the 3 VMs, which are vSAN nodes, and try again, right?
Yes.
Delete the 3 vSAN nodes, set them back up, try again. We trimmed vCenter down the memory allocated. We finally figured out the reason we were timing out was it was actually memory starved. We finally looked at a log and figured out that one of the vSAN nodes just didn't have enough memory to start, because when you acquire the hosts and the data store, it has to bring that into the node and set it all up. And we ran out of memory trying to bring each node into the vSAN storage.
And I'm assuming I'm assuming it's not possible to add some NVMe in there as a sort of a cache RAM.
Not that we knew how to do, right? Like, yeah, maybe somehow. So eventually we realized that you could, when you acquire a vSAN host into your vSAN data store, there's a little wizard that helps you acquire your new nodes and your storage. And so you go and you tell it all the storage you're using on all three nodes, and that it imports it all. But sadly, if you do all three at once, it just fires all three of them off at once, consumes your memory, and you get a billion errors, and that's the end of it, right? One of the nodes drops. The third node would always drop off because it would do the first node, start the second node. By the time it started the third node, it ran out of memory, and then the third node got whacked, and that was what it was. So eventually we realized you could just import one node, right? Then wait till that's all done, right? Then import the next node, wait till it's all done, then import the third node, and wait till it's all done. And we're like, okay, you're managing how much memory it needs to import the nodes, right? And then build the data store.
So is that something you could script or control?
Yeah, we did it manually. Yeah, no, but we just did it manually, right? Because we just got this one server we're setting up. So we did it manually, and we got them all three up and imported on the GDK. One of them dropped off, gave us a bunch of errors, and that was the end of that, right? It was dead again, right? And now you've done all this, you've done it, and you've done it like 5 times, and you just realize that you cannot run a NUC with only 32 gig of memory and make vSAN work, let alone then make NSX work, let alone make the SDDC manager work. And this is, in the end, is what William also went through. So William Lamb tried to do this earlier in the month, right? And eventually we had to order bigger machines, faster machines, and we eventually ordered a GDK different number that had didn't have soldered on memory. It had SIMs. Then we ordered the bigger SIMs. We got 128 gig of memory, and William was able to get VCF 5.2 or 5.3. I don't know if there's a 3 or 2 on there. Got the latest VCF up and running and installed on a GDK with 24 cores and 128 gig of memory. So we were successful, and he's here at Connect, and he's going to have a session to demo it running Holodeck installed VCF on a single NUC. The single NUC cost about out the door because we had to buy the extra memory. You bought it. The machine was $550. That's pretty reasonable. But then we had to buy the extra SATA, which was another $150 for a gig Samsung SATA. And then we also had to buy extra memory, which was another $200. So 200 plus 100. By the time we got out the door, we were at probably $900 for everything we needed on that machine to run VCF. But we could declare that there's VCF 5.x running on a NUC for under $1,000, right? So he's got that, and so we can declare victory on that. But the machines we had for the lab, then we tried, to see how far we could get, and we actually got further on the MaxTang NUC than we did on the GTK Tech machine. So yeah, that's now we're doing the lab. We're going to take people through this and show them the gear, and they can play with it. And we got one of the machines, the 32 gig GTK. We're going to raffle off. You can run ESX on it, or you can turn it into whatever you want, a game server, or you can use the fast memory and run an AI model on it. Yeah, because that's apparently what this machine is designed for. So that's kind of interesting. And I'm going to put some specs. We're not doing the labs till tomorrow. I'm going to put the GPU specs there, right? And maybe look at what DeepSeek would run on, like how how well would that a home lab running an AI model would work. Yeah, and that was basically what your mother needed to know. What I wish my mom told me was don't try to run VCF on anything less than 128 gig of memory, and you probably want 256 gig. Period.
So for me, that almost sounds like a opportunity, depending on the spouse acceptance factor, to go out and buy a used server off of a place like eBay that's loaded up with those specs, and get the quiet fans and set that off to the side somewhere.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's me and William talked about that. Do we think that home lab Nook is over because if you're trying to run the full stack, on a single machine embedded, why are you doing that, right? Like, just go get a bigger machine, and you spend your $2,000 on a desktop side, a workstation kind of under your desk, and then you can run the whole payload, and it'll run probably real workloads. Where even if you got all this stuff running on your Nook, I'm not sure how many workloads you'd be able to run on this stuff. It barely runs VCF, let alone putting a heavy workload or a couple of VMs on it, doing things, right? So, but nonetheless, it was interesting. Interesting experience. The thing is, I could still probably try to run NSX on the Nook. The Nook did not die. It had enough memory to keep running things, right? And vSAN, my data store was up and running. And I literally just ran out of time. I couldn't, because I want to go make things run on the GTK, right? And so I was excited about that. So once I got vSAN running on the Max Tang Nook, I'm like, that was fun. It's running. It kind of times out, gives some errors, but it never stopped working. It's there. It works. So then I thought, I'm going to go make the GTK work. That'll be great. It's 24 cores. But no, it turned out to be the memory constraint was much worse than the CPU constraint. CPU constraint just, the machine got hot and you had to wait a while, right? But the memory constraint would just tend to break, VCF and vSAN, right? It just broke it.
Yeah. So this sounds like what you're going to be sharing this week at Connect.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's
awesome.
Yeah, and then we did get a full PO cut to run labs at Explore with whatever machines we need to buy to make it work. And what I would say is we have yet to find a Nook that will run VCF 9. We're still looking, right? Because 9 needs like 256 gig of memory, with those number of cores. And so far, we've only found a Nook that had 128 gig of memory for the cards. We have not found one that has. So we're still looking. We think that by June, there's going to be a couple of vendors that have them available. And so then we're going to do a purchase and show up at Explore with the latest hardware that should run 9, which by then should be announced, right? So that'll be fun.
Woohoo! That would be awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah. I was going to say, and if the server vendors don't come through for you with little Nooks that'll have 256 gig in them, are we going to get another fun session on things I wish my mother told me part 2?
Part 2, yeah, probably. That's what's going to happen, right? I'm on the fence on this because once we got this all done, I still struggled with what's a fun code lab, right? Like, it's a fun home lab session, but code lab is supposed to be writing code, not. Now, what we did have is Frankie was putting together some vSAN command line PowerShell stuff that once you had your home lab set up, you could go play with vSAN PowerShell, right? And do some interesting storage stuff, and we thought that would be fun, right? Because a lot of people haven't written any PowerShell for vSAN, right? And PowerShell for NSX for that matter, because a lot of people don't have either one.
Yes. So those do actually sound like quite fun code labs.
Yeah. So, and since we did get vSAN running, we should be able to get vSAN running on some kind of NUC, right? Yeah, we need to get a NUC that has enough memory. That's all there is to it. We'll solve it. It'll be fun. I don't think it'll be failure version 2, but maybe.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and it sounds like you've learned a ton. As a community member, thank you for sharing that with us, because I know soon I've got to get my lab converted over to a VCF lab.
That's what William was telling me, that honestly, because of the core requirements for 9 and even 8, right, everybody's going to have to refresh their hardware. Like everybody. If you're listening to this and you got a home lab, the likelihood of your home lab gear running VCF 8 or 9 is almost zero. So go sell your home lab stuff quick before everybody figures out that when you go to VCF 8 or 9, you're in for a hardware refresh, right? Because I think that's the truth, right? Even I look at this and go, yeah, I don't have any 24 core machines sitting at home that I could just use, right? So you're either going to your point, go on eBay and buy a decent enterprise server for like, somebody did it for like $2,800, bought one off eBay. It was pretty good. But I think everybody's going to be in for an upgrade. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm frozen or Tony's frozen. I think that Tony's frozen. Yep, Tony disappeared, but that's okay. He'll come back. And so that was a fun experiment. I'm super excited about what we're doing, what William is presenting on Friday. He's going to take us through his VCF 5.x install, right, on a NUC for under $1,000. So that'll be fun for everybody to see. And if you did want to upgrade, he's going to pre-talk about his 9 requirements. And so that'll also be good. So I'm thinking that by the time we're done, we will have a pretty good spec here at the end of this week's show, which would be good. And then Connect itself is a great show. Like we say, we've been talking about AI. We had a Birds of a Feather AI session today where we spent 2 hours just talking about AI. I learned like 4 different things. So if you miss Connect this year, but you want to have a good community conference, we did kind of have unconference sessions where we didn't have slide decks. We had 3 people at the front of the room, and everybody put white stickers on whiteboards, and we aggregated up the stickers, and then we tried to have conversations about the main core topics. And we talked about models, AI models. We talked about the AI runtime that's needed to run those models, and the GPU utilization or GPU usage requirements for the runtimes for Ethereum and Google's AI and OpenAI. So it was kind of interesting to talk about that and just have everybody ask their questions, right? There are some people that are training their models, but most people just need to have GPU utilization to run the models, not necessarily for training. We talked a little about training and RAG, retrieval augmentation, and that was kind of interesting. So really good Birds of a Feather session. There's a Birds of a Feather session on VCF going on right now. I'm missing that in order to record this podcast. And then there's kickoff tomorrow. 60 leaders learning how to run communities. We had a cool idea called where you have a book club, but we're going to call it the VMUG Blogger Club. And what it is go send out 5 or 6 good blog articles to your chapter members and pick 1 or 2 topics, have everybody go read the articles and bring their own articles or share more content on the subject. Then everybody comes together, either at a restaurant or a meeting place and talks about the articles, right? What they learned, what they didn't learn, how they're implementing in their own data center. So it was some brainstorming on how to run better, interesting community chapter meetings. So had a lot of fun with that. So been busy with the leaders. That's wrapping up today. Conference starts tomorrow, and a lot of great sessions, 4 different tracks. And me and Frankie are running the code labs, which is really, I should rename it the code failure labs, but it was a great learning experience. And then great t-shirts and some swag, and just a lot of great sessions in the 4 different tracks. So been good to be here in St. Louis. We're talking that definitely a Connect conference is fun for people to talk pure community. What does it mean to be part of the community? Just a different vibe here at this show. Lighter weight. We fit on 1 hotel floor, right? So all the session rooms are in the hotel floor, but there's a reg area, there's booth, there's, nice branding everywhere, a nice expo hall with maybe 20 different vendors in the expo hall. VMware has a great presence here, and a lot of different vendors are there. And everybody's got conference badges, and, feels like a conference is a conference, and good food. So really like the idea of coming together for 3 or 4 days, and just, it's much lower key because we're all in the same hotel. And so you can bump into people in the lobby, you can bump into people on the floor, and it's just a lower key, funner environment to talk our tech and our community. So really like that idea. Love the idea if you're a chapter leader, you should definitely be at a Connect next year. They are talking about doing Connect next year. I think it's worthy. I think it's an amazing community event. And much like the user cons, it's a great place for community. But this feels like an overnight, couple of days overnight in a big hotel where everybody's there. I don't know if you've ever been to a family reunion where you've all stayed in a hotel, and there's 20, 30, 40 people in a hotel, and you're all having fun together. That's what the vibe here feels like. It feels like a community vibe of family members all bumping into each other and talking shop and talking about what's coming. And then having, the birds of a feather sessions today were great because we got to just free form conversation on what's happening and what's VMware and VCF's role in the future of AI, and where's VCF going in general. A lot of natural conversation there. Tonight we're going to a brewery, so it's going to be fun. They're going to bus us over to a brewery, and again, 300 people at the show, so it's manageable. It's not a million people where you don't find anybody. Everybody's together. We go together. We walk around the city together. So it's been really fun. So if you didn't make it to this show, you might consider making it to next year's show, or watch for your user con in your city in Europe. There's still 6 or 7 user cons that are going to be happening. Explore Roadshow will be happening in Europe, and I think it'll have a similar vibe, which I got to say, coming to this conference, it's been a fun vibe. So I'm pretty happy about that. And that's, I think, what I got. I know that Corey's on the plane. I know that Bob's downstairs, and I'm headed back downstairs to help Frankie set up the labs, and we'll run labs Thursday and Friday. And then there's some great keynotes, and Hawk Dan's going to come at the end of Friday to wrap it all up, and then we're headed back to California at the end of the week. So been an amazing week to be here, and I think let's see, I'm talking to myself now because Tony Foster obviously isn't coming back, but thanks for listening. Can't wait to see everybody get your call for papers in. If you got papers, go do it. Get a badge. We raffled off some free passes to VMUG leaders yesterday, so we're already getting Explore going. People are getting excited about what we're going to be talking about at Explore. So, and then, VCF 9 launch is coming. I think it's going to be in Q3, so before the end of July. I think that'll get launched. A lot of good stuff there. And then, of course, we've been talking about VMUG Advantage and getting your home VCF license and passing their VCF certification. More people are here ready to take the tests. The tests are free at Connect for the next 2 days. Turns out the test is pretty easy. I don't know anybody that's failed yet, so don't think you have to study too hard. The kind of common thread is that if you know ESX pretty well, you should be able to pass. Even if you've never done much with vSAN or SDDC Manager or NSX, if you know ESX enough, you're probably going to pass. So go get your Advantage membership, $200 a year, support the community. It's really your yearly community membership. And then we've been doing special stuff all week with regards to those who have Advantage memberships or qualify for the raffle. Advantage member gets you into the Ask Me Anything with William Lamb. So Advantage membership is just a way for the community to keep its budget going. It's really community funded activities, right? So $200 a year helps VMUG stay in business because the partners are not giving VMUG any more money. We've increased our money. Broadcom has given VMUG more money, like to the tune of an extra $1 million a year. And so we're supporting it, but they have lost a lot of the partner ecosystem because Broadcom doesn't go with partners anymore. They go direct, or they go to the MSPs. And the MSPs are coming around to starting to sponsor VMUG, but they're not quite there yet. So the Dells and the IBMs and the Intels who used to give VMUG $600,000 a year, they're not doing that anymore. And so VMUG is going to go part user funded, right? And Advantage is one of those things that if you can afford it, you should probably pay it, buy it, expense it, don't expense it, just pay it. And then come to your local chapter meetings, come to the user cons, come to Connect, be part of the community. And that's how VMUG is going to fund itself, right? Or at least look for more user benefited funding. So that's what they're doing. That's what the Connect is this week is $400 gets you a conference that's pretty much funded by yourselves instead of lots of tons of partners and partner sessions and so forth. So that's what's happening. Hope everybody has a great rest of your week. I know I will be back next week. Hopefully our guests will show up and we'll do a community podcast and give you a rundown of the final numbers at Connect and kind of our opinions of it as we move forward. So until then, everybody have a great rest of your week and get some barbecue. We did have barbecue pork and tri-tip at the St. Louis baseball stadium last night. They had a college, they actually had a high school game, baseball high school game. And we got to go over there and eat some barbecue and sit in the stands and watch a high school game, which is kind of fun. Big stadium, pretty empty, but got some barbecue. So always good to get some tri-tip. And hope everybody gets some barbecue for the rest of the week. Until then, have a great week. See you next week.